I'm absolutely convinced, without a shadow of doubt, that the house on the edge of town, the old Ashwood Manor, lived up to its chilling reputation. Locals dubbed it the most haunted house in all of Massachusetts. Unlike the tales of haunted spirits you've seen in movies, this one has roots far deeper, tied to ancient folklore and whispered curses. But we're not diving into old texts tonight. No, tonight we're headed to the sleepy town of Brighton Hollow, a tiny forgotten dot in the southeastern part of the state, where the legend of Ashwood Manor still sends shivers down the spine of those brave enough to whisper about it. The mystery of Ashwood's haunting has pulled in curious souls for generations. It's one of those places where the air feels heavy, like it's drenched with secrets, and just stepping onto its grounds makes your skin crawl. There's this electricity, a charge in the air that prickles the back of your neck, pulling you in while every instinct screams for you to turn back. The manor wasn't always a haunted pit of despair. It started out as a proud, stately home in the late 1800s, built by the Thorne family in 1887. It was meant to be a place of luxury, where high society gathered, not a breeding ground for the sinister reputation it would earn. The Thornes were a devoutly religious family, and this manor was their sanctuary, a place where faith and family values thrived. But Ashwood was built on land with a dark past. Before the Thornes, there had been a much smaller house here, destroyed in a fire back in 1849. The land had belonged to a monastery in the 1700s, and the monks had used it as a retreat. Of course, over time, darker things happened in those walls. The most famous story? The affair between a monk and a young woman from a nearby town, Maggie. The tale goes that they were found out, and the punishment was brutal, beyond anything you'd imagine. The monk was dragged to the courtyard and hung, while Maggie was bricked into one of the walls of the original house, left to die slowly of starvation and madness. No one knows exactly where she was hidden, but legend says her restless soul never left the grounds. Soon after the Thornes completed Ashwood Manor, things started to shift. Whispers spread among the townsfolk about strange happenings in the manor. Visitors spoke of hearing footsteps in the dead of night, though no one was there. Shadows seemed to dart through the corners of rooms when no one was looking. It was as if the house had its own pulse, its own heartbeat. One particular story, from around 1890, really took hold in the town's lore. The Thorne children often played in the manor after school, their laughter echoing through the halls. One chilly afternoon, the youngest boy, Samuel, wandered into the drawing room, a place always heavy with shadows, even in the middle of the day. There he froze. At the far end of the room, standing by an old armoire, was a woman, a ghostly figure dressed in a tattered black dress, pacing back and forth. Her face was hollow, her skin tight and pale, her eyes sunken deep into her skull. But the most terrifying part? She had no feet. She hovered above the ground, her form floating as if gravity no longer had a claim on her. Samuel bolted from the room, his screams drawing his parents. Of course, when they rushed to check, the figure had vanished, leaving only the cold dread behind. Samuel never played in the manor again. For 40 years, the Thornes lived in Ashwood Manor without another significant event. At least, nothing they spoke of. That all changed just before Old Man Thorne was set to retire. One stormy evening, while working in his study, Thorne heard a scream that echoed from the courtyard. When he looked out, he saw a group of children running in panic, disappearing into the woods that surrounded the estate. He rushed outside, grabbed one of the stragglers, and asked what had happened. The boy, pale as a ghost, whispered that they'd seen the floating woman again, this time outside in the courtyard, and just like before, she disappeared right before their eyes. The legend of Maggie had taken root once more. Those who dared to visit the manor after that often claimed to see her, sometimes a fleeting glimpse in a window, other times a full-body apparition. She became known as the Witch of Ashwood, a relentless spirit bound to the house. Not long after, the Thornes left the manor for good, and the house fell into disrepair. It remained abandoned for years until a new couple, the Blackwells, moved in. They'd heard the stories, but being city folks, they didn't believe in ghosts. It didn't take long for them to realize they were wrong. Mrs. Blackwell was cleaning the dusty old drawing room when she found something unsettling. Hidden in the back of an old armoire was a skull, small, delicate, clearly belonging to a young woman. The couple called the authorities, but they were never able to identify the remains. The skull was about 100 years old, and rumors swirled that it belonged to Maggie herself. Not long after the skull was removed from the house, things took a dark turn. The Blackwells started hearing footsteps at night. Objects moved on their own, and the sound of hooves echoed through the courtyard as if an unseen horse-drawn carriage was making its rounds. Desperate, they contacted a local journalist, hoping to bring attention to the strange occurrences. The story made its way to a paranormal investigator named Dr. Harris, who arrived with his team to study the manor. From the moment they stepped inside, they were met with cold drafts, whispers, and the undeniable sense that they were not alone. During one investigation, Dr. Harris and his team witnessed a glass pane shatter for no reason, narrowly missing one of the researchers. Shadows moved through the house, taunting them, but every time they tried to follow, the figures would vanish. The Blackwells didn't last long after that. 3 years to be exact before they packed up and left, swearing they'd never set foot in that cursed house again. But the legend didn't die with their departure. Each new family, each new resident added their own chapter to the tale of Ashwood Manor. The house refused to rest, and neither did its spectral inhabitants. The last documented incident came in 1939, when a fire burned the manor to the ground, just as a local psychic had predicted. But even with the house gone, strange things continued to happen on the land. Construction workers tasked with clearing the debris claimed they heard voices and saw shadowy figures moving through the charred remains. To this day, those who visit the grounds of Ashwood Manor say they feel a presence, something watching, waiting. And on quiet nights, when the wind blows just right, you can still hear the sound of hooves echoing through the trees. That's all for this tale of Ashwood Manor. I hope it sent a chill down your spine. Until next time, when we dive even deeper into the world of the unexplained.